Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jose Cansecast, a podcast about baseball legend Jose Canseco, with your hosts, Jeff May and Adam Todd Brown.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode
Of
Jose Cansecast, baby.
Bienvenidos, everybody.
Your foremost Jose Canseco themed podcast.
I would argue that that is 100% probably correct.
I can't imagine that there are a lot of Cansecasts out there in the potosphere.
I doubt it. I don't.
But-
Yeah, I think we're probably on the cutting edge of this one. And if there are, it's probably like a sports network
Yeah, like
thing.
I was going to say ESPN. has
Yeah,
one
which
where,
like
these
shout out to Brett Rader. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Over there at Yahoo Sports. But sports podcasts from a sports network are going to be a totally different thing.
That being said, if they want to buy this podcast,
Absolutely.
we will sell it to Yahoo Sports for what essentially is a very sellouty bargain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like just enough to like
Just.
pay rent for a few months, probably.
If that.
If that. Yeah,
To pay
yeah.
for dinner for a few nights.
And
really
you can
is.
capitalize on this for the rest of your life.
We can.
Exploit us like a Motown artist, Yahoo
Yeah,
Sports.
I will 100% give up the entire miniseries for what is roughly $200 to $300. Like,
So in.
we're just a little
It's a good day's work for
yeah,
us.
yeah. But actually, it's more than a lot of work, a day's work, because we're going to be focusing on sort of the sweet spot of Jose Canseco's
Yes.
baseball career. We're going to be talking about sort of his post-rookie year, because last episode we focused a lot on sort of the early years, which it runs a little dry,
It does.
but we're doing sort of a retrospective on what we would consider the Bash Brothers era.
Right.
The late 80s and the early 90s era, and primarily focusing on what we have gleaned from online research, but also from you and I both read Juiced.
Right. The last episode was primarily the stuff in it was drawn from newspaper and magazine articles from around the time.
Primary historical resources, as we say in the educational world.
And we could still have done that. We looked at some stuff for this episode, but this episode we're digging into Juiced.
You know what I ended up researching a lot for this episode, which I was surprised I was going to do? Mark McGwire.
Oh, sure.
I looked up a lot of Mark McGwire
Yeah.
because I wanted to know what he's doing at this time.
What is he doing?
At this time, he's working with the Padres currently as of 2018 or 2019, I forget. Hitting coach for them,
What's he know about hitting?
right? Well, he was a hitting coach for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Like, right, he retired, and they're like, well, we're going to bring him in.
Yeah.
Because, yes, why wouldn't you? And we'll talk more about why. You know, it's more than just roids and runs at that point in time. But Mark McGwire at this time, at the time where Canseco, because I don't want to say too much because we're about to talk about Jose Canseco, and sort of the understandable chip that sort of rests itself on his shoulder throughout what seems like his career.
Yeah.
And it's a flip of the coin as to which, is it going to land heads or tails as to how he himself is going to view this era.
Right.
Because it is very hot or cold. And even in the book Juiced, which I would suggest it's an interesting book. What'd you think about it?
It's like you said when we first texted back and forth about it, clearly written by Jose Canseco.
That's true.
There is no ghostwriting happening here.
It reads, and the way I think I texted it to you is it reads like almost like a high schooler's book report.
Kind of, yeah.
And in a way that somebody who hasn't spent his life writing is then writing a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
That fascinates me.
And it's written in a way that someone who goes to great lengths to make himself seem like he's this shy outsider who's not really sure of himself, at several points very self-aggrandizing and just flies right in the face of all of that.
Which is, I think, interesting, and I think also indicative of when he chose to write a chapter. I honestly do feel like there is a certain point of both things being very true. I think he is a very interpersonally shy person. Like, I do feel that way. And at the same time, being aware of your public persona and your Adonis-like reputation and being photographed shirtless for so many publications and everything like that. Like you can't,
and you
can be shy and be aware that you're hot.
Yeah. And there's points he makes in here that we'll get to that are almost kind of uncomfortable to disagree with or question.
Yeah. Well, because it's his experiences.
It's his experience, and Jose Canseco, at the end of the day, is still a person of color. And it's hard for me as a white dude viewing all of this from the perspective of a fan in the 80s and now a person who's looking back on all of it now. It's hard for me to really be like, okay, you might be overstating it there a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like in some spots,
it's not, the math fits in that there are certain ingredients that are 100% true. Whether you are exaggerating or not those ingredients, it's an immeasurable thing. Because we can't actually say.
Yeah, I can't.
Because what it really comes down to is a lot of like the reputation that one gets with Jose, and he's just like, they did it. You know, I got kind of buried because I'm Cuban, and it's like,
yeah, and maybe a little bit because of that.
Sure. Your average Milwaukee baseball fan isn't going to be like, you know who I like is that Jose Canseco. Like, they're not going to do that. But at the same time,
if he played for Milwaukee,
he was selling posters.
Yeah, and
I was a fan. Well, I'll put it this way. I was a huge fan in an all-white town in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, from my personal perspective, I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Yeah. But we'll get to it.
But it sure is. Anyway, so the intro to Juice.
The intro to Juice is one of the craziest fucking things I've ever read in my life.
I started reading it and immediately texted you.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, holy shit, this starts in such a curveball because you think it's going to be a tell-all.
Right.
This book is not a tell-all. It is. But this book is 33% autobiography, 33% tell-all, and then 33% infomercial about drugs.
About the benefits of steroids.
And it's threaded throughout the whole
And there's
book.
even a disclaimer at the beginning that says this book is not meant to promote the use of steroids. And I read that and thought, oh, that's
an editor's.
That's a healthy thing to put in there considering the subject matter. And then you read the intro right after that preface, and it's like, yes, it is. It reads like Jose Canseco thought steroids were about to become a thing you could buy at Walgreens, and he wanted to be at the forefront of that industry.
I'm going to say he's not wrong in that as well. I honestly think, look at how far weed has come when the responsibility factor and the taxation factor really comes in. I don't think he's 100% wrong. I do think he's 80% wrong.
Yeah.
And over-the-counter shit, it happens all the time. But he's like, steroids will preserve people's lives. It will create stronger muscles in people. And first and foremost, and I've said this before, HGH sounds amazing.
Yeah,
like
kinda.
Like HGH, because he says it, he was like, you know, the steroids and the this and the androstenedione and the that. And he's like, you know, it makes your muscles big. And he's like, and HGH is just kind of awesome. There's no downsides to it.
And is HGH, is that illegal? Or is that a thing?
No,
like,
it's used in medicine.
Yeah, people can go out and just do it.
HGH sounds fucking dope. And like the way you inject it is he's like, you just pinch a little bit of belly fat, stick a little syringe in there, shoot it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could do that.
Yeah, the stuff about steroids in the beginning, one of the things that I was struck by reading this is, if nothing else, it kind of lessened my belief that Jose Canseco is one of the greatest pure baseball players of all time. But I am convinced he is one of the greatest and most knowledgeable steroid users of all time.
100%. A man of science in the field of body sculpting, I guess.
It's kind of like Rocky IV, where Rocky's dragging fucking logs through the woods and Ivan Drago's hooked up to computers and injecting steroids. And it's like, pretty similar result.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And it's funny, too, because
Can't inject heart in a lab, unfortunately. Russia.
You can inject lab into a heart, though. So this book, written around 2004, published in 2005, right?
Right.
Now, I've listened to things retroactively, meaning I've watched and listened to things about and featuring Jose Canseco where he addresses this book. This book was written primarily out of spite. And it's fascinating because he was, and he mentions it in the book, he was blackballed. And he didn't realize he was being fully blackballed until the Dodgers had an open tryout, and he had a good tryout. And then they pulled him aside and they said, we literally can't use you.
Right.
And he was like, oh, okay, Major League Baseball has made me this scapegoat because he's the fucking... I love how he says he likes to refer to himself as like the doctor kind of guy that introduces steroids to everybody. But he gets offended when people call him the Typhoid Mary of steroids. But it's like, that's the same thing, dude. And
he spends a lot of time wondering why he gets all the attention for using steroids early on in his career, which is kind of what we're going to get more into the steroid talk around the time when he was playing on the next episode. But he wonders why that is. And it's like, dude, you're writing a book about how you were the guy to go to in baseball about steroids.
You got everyone addicted.
Yeah, they're going to take you down first.
But at the same time, you also made baseball more interesting.
Significantly.
Like, it's funny because we've talked about this a lot of time with amphetamines and the greenies being the thing that people go to. But like, fucking... without steroids, you weren't going to have 98.
Right. And 98, which was Sosa and McGwire fighting for the home run, like that, the single season home run record, that is what brought baseball back. Because that strike, which we did an episode of the 90s Sucked about, destroyed baseball.
That year, by the way, Jose Canseco, 50 home runs.
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny because we look at it as being like, these two. And it's like, Canseco's like, I was injured and I hit 50.
Yeah.
He was like, I missed a lot of games.
True story. I wish camera phones existed at the time. I wouldn't have even thought to film it. But I was on the phone with a girl that I was trying to date when Mark McGwire hit the home run to either tie or break, I think to break the record. Yeah. And I was on the phone, and as the pitch was thrown, I went, he's going to hit the home run right now. And he fucking hit the home run, and I still never dated that girl.
She doesn't like a know-it-all.
Yeah, I guess so. It probably freaked her out that I was so prescient and that I was able to foretell the future. Just a glimmer of things to come.
So you calling a home run led you to strike out.
Wow.
You like see what I did there?
Ooh. So back to Jose Canseco.
Okay. Well, so Jose has said in an interview, there's an interview that I listened to. It's sort of a preface to a longer interview, but he says, once I am told right before, because he had to, he left baseball right before he hit 500 home runs. He was about maybe 30 away.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I think, blackballed because people didn't like me.
Well, I think he's got a pretty strong case also.
Absolutely. He would have been productive. He even said, he's like, I told people I'd work for the league minimum.
Right.
And they're like,
And we know that happens in sports. Colin Kaepernick is absolutely being blackballed right now.
Yeah.
Or
was
the NFL.
Was earlier, at least.
Yeah.
Do you think he could make it now?
I mean, he
was certainly.
He's expressed that he still wants to play. Yeah. And there is definitely room for him in the league, especially the way offenses have evolved in the past couple seasons. There was a point where his style of play sort of fell out of favor, but that's not the case anymore. It's come back.
Yeah.
It's back to a point where Kaepernick would work. And I think Jose Canseco has a case that he was blackballed. Just if you look at his production.
He was 100% blackballed.
I think his last season, he still hit 30-some home runs.
He's like, if the Patriots had a baseball team, they would have taken him. Like, that's the kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
And especially in the American League where you have the designated hitter, there are few better candidates than Jose Canseco.
No, he should have been the Astros when they shifted to the AL.
Right.
Could have really benefited from a guy who can hit a home run every 10 at bats or something like that. Like, honestly, like that's a real thing. Yeah. That production. So ownership is knowing that they will face sort of almost social penalties for that.
Yeah. But that's a theme you see throughout this book, at least as far as I've gotten into it. I read about 100 pages of it yesterday. He makes a lot of great points, but also they're points that have counterpoints to them.
There are caveats. They're weighted points.
That I don't know if he even realizes he writes into the book himself.
You can tell these chapters are written day to day. And each day there is a very flip or flop view to how that went. And I can only imagine what the editor did for this book.
I bet this book was 1,500 pages before it was edited.
Now, I don't want to jump forward too far ahead, but there was an AMC, I believe, special, maybe not AMC, but like Learning Channel or Discovery or something about him coming off of steroids.
I think it was A&E.
Yes. And he says this book ruined his life in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. He's like, I may have been down when I wrote the book, but I'm so much worse because I did.
Oh, yeah.
And it was probably a really good payday for him.
At the time, yeah.
Like, sure, the advance alone and sales.
Right.
Like, sales were nuts. This was a huge book.
But you also have to kind of see his fellow players' point in that you're the guy who, in your own words, because I don't even know if that's 100% true.
You got us hooked, and now you're snitching us out.
Jose Canseco portrays himself as the guy who made steroids a thing in baseball.
He says Godfather.
Right.
Because he does kind of come off as a guy that would have like a Godfather poster he bought at the mall.
Oh, for
One
sure.
of those like colored pencil looking ones.
Yeah.
You know the ones I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Next to a Scarface.
Right. And he portrays himself as that. And then he's also the guy who's telling on everybody years later, people aren't going to fucking respond to that, especially if you're pushing the idea that steroids are a good and helpful thing that aren't really that big of a health problem. Well, then why are you out here snitching?
Yeah, it's funny too because the snitching, the real snitching is like the end where he just like names and he just drops them off there. But there's also shit he does where he says stuff. Like, did you get the part about players cheating on their wives?
Oh, yeah. I just got to that
like,
part.
Roger
Yeah.
Clemens is the only person I ever met that didn't fool around on his wife.
Yeah,
Like,
imagine being anyone but Roger Clemens.
Imagine being Ruben Sierra. You're like, what the fuck, man? But he's like, man. And then he talks about like Mark Grace fucking ugly girls, a slump buster.
Yeah, I didn't get to that part because that's going to be the next episode. We're going to get past because we still haven't really.
No, we haven't. All we've said is the intro to Juiced is insane, and we've really gone on a tangent. But it is because it's a goddamn infomercial for drugs.
It sure is. It's 100% an infomercial for drugs.
So he opens with the dive back into his childhood, which we kind of discussed earlier.
We kind of covered it.
It's a little more in depth, but there's very much a subjective viewpoint of how he was treated by his father. He makes his father seem very emotionally abusive.
Yeah, and that
like withholding.
And that's one thing we didn't mention on the last episode, and I think it's important because so much of him using steroids is tied to the fact that his mother died. But reading this book, it feels to me more like he's trying to impress his father.
It's definitely a part of it.
Yeah.
There's no way you can ignore that, you know?
Yeah. And he keeps coming back to it so many different times throughout the book.
Yeah. He doesn't forget about it.
And he mentions an incident where when he was playing with the Texas Rangers, he hit 3 home runs, had 5 hits, 8 RBIs in a 17-9 win over the Mariners. And he calls his dad after, and his dad asks about the at-bats where he struck out or didn't get a hit. And that is shitty to an extent, but also if you hear any really elite athlete talk about wins and performances like that, that's kind of what they're going to say is like,
I missed those 2 at bats.
Yeah, I really could have done better. Like, I need to correct some mistakes I made, but yeah, otherwise, pretty good game.
There's a fascinating aspect to that too, which also A's defense. 17-9 isn't as impressive as you want to pretend because you gave up 9 runs.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, no one was doing their job that day.
But there is that. And I think in general, this is going to sound unfortunate. I try not to inflate the amount of attention I didn't get from my father.
Right.
You know? Because like, yeah, man, I got daddy issues too.
Well, I mean, my dad died when I was 17. So
yeah, you know.
I get it.
You know, it's a weird thing. But like, I'm very like, yeah, my dad wasn't around, but he tried to be. He just had to work really hard. Like, he did his best. But like, I think we do really remember the hard stuff more.
Yeah, and there are even other people quoted in this book who are of the opinion that, hey, man, your dad was there.
Yeah.
Like, he was at all your practices.
Your games giving you shit. That would have been nice.
He was there when you went home after practices. It could have been worse, but also in 2019, it's hard to take that stand on it when it's Jose Canseco saying things like, this is a quote about the phone call with his dad, "I was dumbstruck. I felt like saying, gee, I don't know. I was probably still out of breath from my 3 home runs. I don't think I was ever good enough for him." That's going to stick with a person.
He's the Tiger dad.
Yeah.
Honestly, and you hate to say it, but some of the most productive and successful people in the world have shitty micromanaging parents.
Yeah, and it's tempting. It's tempting for someone on our side to go, but argue with the results. Whereas Jose Canseco is probably like, I could have just taken steroids like I did. Yeah. And he's like, probably figured it out.
I got those results and my life is not great right now.
Yeah.
That shit does a lot to you more than just fucking getting huge arms.
Right.
Long after your baseball career is over, you're carrying the injuries of parental neglect or abuse.
Yeah.
Emotionally, you know?
I feel like I wanted to bring it up because it was a thing we didn't talk about on the episode about his childhood.
Yeah.
There is a real lack of confidence that he at least tries to portray.
Well, I think he also brings that up with the sort of not being treated well and saying like, oh, I'm a victim, so I'm not very confident. It's hard to say that he addresses that he has no confidence. And then in the next chapter, he's just like, check out this car I got.
Right. There's a chapter about his cars.
Yeah. It's a great chapter, too.
And we'll talk about it, too, because it's a weirdly placed chapter.
It's sort of like, remember in Shakespearean tragedies when you'd have a comedy in the middle of it to, like, ease the pressure?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what that chapter is. And as I was reading the book, I was like, the fuck? Because it's not called Gassed.
I went into that chapter like, this surely isn't going to be all about your cars, is it?
Did you flip a car with your bare arms, Jose? Did your wife bash your car up with a baseball bat?
Yeah.
No, you just had awesome cars.
Right.
You just brought...
Pretty straightforward.
Just drove your friends in your good cars.
There's a chapter about me buying a bunch of cars. Right. I think we'll get to it.
But we will get to that.
Yeah, the lack of confidence thing. One thing he brings up in particular that I don't doubt. Well, we know this story happened. He at one point is in the Oakland A's organization, and this player was drafted in the first round, and Jose Canseco was drafted in the 15th round, and they're now on the same team. And he has a conflict with this first
like
round
an aggressive tag
draft pick. Yeah. And the management, the team manager, takes the first round draft pick side. And not only that, but relegates Jose Canseco to the role of bat boy for the next few days. And
he almost quits. And then
quits.
One of the coaches is just like, they're trying to see how you handle bullshit. And that's what keeps him.
Right.
Is that it's almost like a character building hazing?
Yeah.
Like it's the best way that Jose portrays it, I think.
Right. And he brings up, well, I'm Cuban and that guy's white. And so that's why they sided with him. And it's like, yes, that's probably part of it. But also he's a first round draft pick and you're a 15th round draft pick.
They invested a lot of money in this guy.
They're going to side with the person they invested more money in. And the bat boy thing, if you're not a sports fan, that's going to sound a lot more aggressive than it is, because hazing, especially hazing of rookies, has been
very common. Yeah.
And one of my favorite sports stories, and I don't even know how much hazing of rookies even still happens because of this. When Dez Bryant was signed by the Dallas Cowboys, his first season in training camp, at one point, one of the defensive linemen was like, carry my pads, rookies carry pads. And Dez Bryant was like, no, that's not what I'm here for, dude. And he didn't carry the pads. So I don't know, and we're in a era now where hazing is highly frowned upon. But at the time, it's not like they beat him with bars of soap. Like, you're bat boy for a couple days. They're trying to fuck with you.
Yeah. Yeah. But it does also you can glean from that the idea that Jose does carry this chip on his shoulder where wrongdoing will often be attributed to, well, this is the institutional racism of baseball, which not wrong, but it's also not the 40s.
Right.
There have been players at that level.
Well, that's the thing. He talks about at so many points, like, oh, do you think baseball really wants a Cuban? as a star in the league. And it's like,
yeah, if it's a star, a star.
Yeah.
They can sell posters and jerseys and they'll sell anything.
Like if any sport has been very welcoming of Latino players, it's been baseball.
Well, it's been dominated by players.
And even at that time, like Fernando Valenzuela was huge.
Yeah.
Baseball has a pretty rich tradition of not just embracing Latino players, but people of color in general. The thing baseball...
Starting around...
Baseball's
had a rocky... Has had a rocky past, sure.
Let's say modern era.
Yeah,
baseball.
Although I will say it is funny that you look at what baseball is now when teams are generally 40 to 60% people from South Central America and the islands versus it was dominantly black and white at the time, but it's also like there were black players that were world famous.
Willie Mays,
like,
Hank Aaron.
Yeah, like you can't deny that.
And that's a huge problem in baseball now. Yeah. There are, I think, something like 0.8% of the league is black players now.
Torrey Hunter is trying to fix that.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be fixed. It's crazy.
He does the RBI initiative, the Reinvigorating Baseball in Inner Cities.
Yeah.
Because baseball is it's the second most expensive sport behind hockey for youth to play. I mean, look at soccer and look at friggin' basketball where you're just like...
Yeah, those are cheap sports to play,
even that. And football, generally, pads are provided by teams. So, like, with baseball, you got to get your own glove. You got to get your own you get your own bat, cleats.
So, he talks about stuff like that. And it's...
Again, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong, but also, it's like any book about a subject like this. There's going to be... If you dig into it, you'll find other potential perspectives to take on it. Because there's another incident that comes up later where he makes the 86 All-Star team.
Yeah.
And then the manager doesn't play him at all in the All-Star game, which that to me would be a thing where I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I'm one of the like, is this because I'm Cuban or because I'm going to fuck Madonna in 3 years? Like, what's happening?
He had no brain.
Yeah, and the entire Cuban community's reasoning behind it is, well, that manager had brain cancer.
Yeah.
He had no brain.
But that was also an older manager too, right? Like he did
actually, Dick Hauser, he did actually have brain cancer at the time.
He did.
He managed that game.
But he was also older at the time.
Right.
So there's part of it where you could be like, he also could have been a little racist.
Yeah.
And also Jose was very young.
Right.
He was a baby at the time.
Yeah, he was super young. He would have been 23.
23
probably.
23 or 24, yeah.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how pro steroids this book is.
There is little to no, according to this book, it's not a lot of drawbacks to steroids.
Yeah, very few.
In that documentary that I watched, he's like, I'm dealing with a lot of shit from steroids now, like coming off of it, because your body stops producing its own testosterone. So he's writing this book at a time when he is still taking steroids.
Right.
So he's like, shit's great. And when you try coming off of it after doing it for 30 years almost, there's going to be some reactions.
There's going to be some problems, yeah.
Going to have totes probs, bro.
And what's interesting to me is that he brings up steroids in a way that kind of undoes some of the points he makes later in the book.
And that's why it's so obvious, I can't stress this again, that you can see his mood per chapter of what he was like the day he wrote it.
Right.
That's fascinating to me. I've never seen that before in a book.
Yeah.
Like I've literally, I swear, like, because I don't read. No, but I've literally never seen a book where you can be so sure of what a person's day was like than Juiced. It's fucking fascinating. There's a reason he wrote a middle of the book chapter about cars.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing that was just on his mind that day. And he was like, I think I'll talk about the cars. Like, it's so nuts. Because some days he's like, I was very good. I worked really hard. I was very diligent about this. I studied the statistics and the probability of hitting. I was very scientific about this. And other times he's like, steroids made me huge and that's why I was successful.
Yeah.
It very much depends on what he was feeling that day, which tracks with the personality that he has had and continues to have.
And probably we've always heard a person taking steroids, there's emotional roller coasters, and I feel like maybe we're seeing that.
He literally says, I've never seen emotional roller coasters the way people describe roid rage. He says that in the book. He's like, I don't understand. I think people say roid rage. I've never seen or experienced that.
Huh.
And there's part of it because he talks later about going to jail for stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you've been in jail a couple times.
Yeah, well, one of the things he talks about when we mention how pro steroids this is, at one point he talks about the 1985 season, which was he played part of that season in the major leagues. Yeah. And he mentions that between AA, AAA, and the majors, he hit 40 home runs and had 140 RBIs. And now this is the season where he starts taking steroids. The season before he did all right.
Yeah. Also, it's great that the 2 chapters are bookended by David Wells quotes.
Oh, yeah. And this is a quote from him talking about that 85 season. And I can tell you now, steroids were the key to it all. And then he goes into a bunch of tips and tricks about how to take steroids properly.
There are probably 6 different portions of the book that just explains how to inject steroids into your ass.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. Because just like, you got to have somebody else do it. Unless me, because I was really good at it. The line of honesty, every time he does what people refer to as like the snitching, it's clearly very honest. The veil of honesty is really when you're trying to discern what is true about him telling you about his background and his personal experiences that don't involve putting a needle in McGwire's ass.
Right.
Or calling Giambi like a toad-looking motherfucker, basically, for doing it wrong.
Yeah, and I just mentioned that 85 season and him mentioning that it's all related to steroids. This episode is mostly about the Bash brothers and about Mark McGwire. And
that's what the plan was.
Yeah, well, no, we're getting there. Yeah. Mark McGwire joins in 1987 as a rookie.
And fucking
dominates
49 home runs.
49 home runs.
A record that will last until 2017, I want to say, for a rookie.
Oh, who broke?
It was somebody hit like 52.
A rookie came close to breaking it this season too.
Yeah, because like it was 2017 or 2018. Because like I said, I was researching McGwire a lot because of this. Like I wanted to learn more about he himself because there's a revelation that Jose Canseco has, and that's generally that they were not friends.
Right.
They were visible. Aaron Judge hit 52 for the Yankees in 2017.
Yeah. That's a feat.
It's pretty good. So McGwire, we saw the posters and the videos and the Lonely Island special. Have you watched that, by the way?
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's fucking amazing. That you see they were packaged as the Bash brothers. And when it really comes down is Jose was like, yeah, we were teammates. Like, we weren't really friends. But then it cuts to, like, can you really not be friends with somebody you're going into a bathroom stall with and injecting in the ass with steroids?
Yeah.
Or is that a sour grapesy thing? But it also makes sense because McGwire was doing, like, the family man kind of thing at the time.
Yeah, it makes sense that they wouldn't be. I feel like there is some degree of awe when it comes to Jose Canseco and Mark McGwire, because Mark McGwire was such a natural baseball talent. Mm-hmm. Jose Canseco says McGwire had one of the best, if not the best, right-handed power swings I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah. He had a fascinating, his stance, his batting stance was always fascinating too. His heel was like facing the pitcher.
Yeah.
Like he had that like up and then he would really kind of pivot. It's very much like a boxing punch.
Right.
That pivot is so crucial in getting your hips and your body behind everything.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating to me to see that translate.
And I can picture a world where their bond was mainly steroids.
Yeah.
And I feel like something like being in awe of someone is something that can turn to being jealous of someone really quick.
Sure. And
I think you see a degree of jealousy in this book.
Yes. There's also interesting things about McGwire. Like when you look at a lot of photos of them, Jose was always very visibly ripped. He would like wear a lot of sleeveless things and tank tops. And McGwire looked like he was trying to not call attention to it.
Right.
Like almost like he knew, like, you know, it's like if you're speeding and you see a cop, you're like, I'm going to slow down. I don't want people to know that I'm doing a crime. That he would like kind of cover his arms a bit. Because there's several instances in the book where people are like, damn, Jose, look at them arms. And he's like, McGwire's arms are bigger than mine.
Right.
He said McGwire had the biggest arms I've ever seen on a ball player. But he didn't call attention to them.
Yeah, so stop calling attention to your huge arms.
Yeah, like
Jose Canseco.
Like part of it is that you're fucking rolling your sleeves up because you've earned those arms, but you did
right.
You did inject for him. And McGwire's kind of quiet.
And also he questions why McGwire doesn't get as much attention for using steroids. And he asked this question about an article that's written in 1988. Well, the answer is because the 1987 season that Mark McGwire hit 49 home runs, you are on record in this book saying he didn't take steroids.
Yeah.
He didn't take steroids until 88. So even if he was just starting to take steroids,
he's still building.
Your accomplishments up to that point are the ones that are in question, not his.
There's a fascinating, by the way, couple of segments in the McGwire stuff that I've heard, which is that they refer to him as a right-handed batter and thrower. McGwire stood 6 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 245 pounds during his playing career. He did not weigh 245 pounds in 1987 or 1988 or 1989. It's going to take a minute.
Right.
For him. His bulk really hits in 1997, 98, 99 when he's getting batting titles and knocking home runs out.
And see, that's the thing. This part could be a little bit of revisionist history.
Yep.
On Jose Canseco's part, because he's like, oh, well, Mark McGwire just hit his arms. All right, well, there's a whole middle section of this book that's just pictures.
I'm talking about the hiding his arms. Jose never mentions it.
No, he does.
Oh, does he?
Jose Canseco mentions in the book that Mark McGwire would wear big shirts to hide how bulky he was getting. And it's like, is that true? Or was he just not getting bulky enough in the span of a couple months of taking steroids for people to be questioning him in 1988?
Or was he being fashionable at the time?
Yeah, exactly.
His clothing was hitting real good around the
time.
Yeah,
he was dressing like Lenny Kravitz. Get off his case.
Yeah.
A lot of flowing scarves covering his biceps.
There's a lot about the Bash Brothers concept that really lands because Jose plays himself out as being sort of the shy kind of like, I'm not like that. And he's like, McGwire got all the attention. And it's like, I remember you getting all the attention. McGwire got all the attention in 98.
Right.
McGwire didn't get all the attention in 88 and 89. He got some because he was great, but you too got the attention, both of you.
Yeah, he talks about McGwire getting so, and it's another thing that bothers me about not just him questioning why Mark McGwire is getting more attention, but also his assertion that no one around this time wanted a Cuban to be the best baseball player. You won the fucking MVP in 88.
Yeah.
Sports writers vote on that.
Yeah.
Your peers vote on that.
Do you believe that he ran a 3.94?
No.
Because he mentions that at one point in time, and I'm like, sure, you were fast as fuck, but like it's 3.9.
I was watching ESPN, I don't remember what show, a while back, and they were talking about a pretty big, I think, quarterback who ran like a 4.2. And the guy was like, you think anyone's ever going to run under 4? And they were like, no.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on. You did not.
Jose I think he is honest in this book. I think his interpretation of honesty of events kind of shifts a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think he's being dishonest realistically during much of this book, if any. I really honestly think he might be convincing himself that things played out the way they did, but his personal experiences are very visible, and he, depending on the day he wrote the chapter, will go from I was the greatest baseball player in the world to nobody cared about me.
Right.
And it's like, people cared, man.
Yeah, it does you're right. It does come off as he's writing this book in response to how he's feeling that day.
Yeah, there are manic chapters.
Yeah.
And then there are chapters that are clearly depressive.
Right.
Like you hate to use those phrases because I'm not a doctor, but there are manic chapters in this.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to talk about
car one.
The
second. Car one is just...
Yeah. There's a quote in here that I loved. The media dubbed us the Bash Brothers, but we were really the Royd Boys.
He thought about that. He thought that he was out and he was like, hold on, I got to write. I'm
going to go mow the lawn and think about this.
He wrote that on a napkin. And then he's like, that one's going to be the one. That's going to be the one they quote in the New York Times.
The Royd Boys.
The media... You were the Bash Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a cool name.
Yeah.
I think that it comes as a shock that they weren't friends because that's just sort of the perception the public always has about people who work
on the same
together.
Team. Yeah.
Or people who are in a band, and people are surprised to find out, bands don't just like hang out together all the time when they're not touring or recording.
Sometimes they need a break.
Yeah, they have their personal lives and they go off and do their own thing, and they're not always the best of friends.
Yeah, they have families.
Yeah.
I also, side note, I loved how he's like writing about his relationship with other members of the A's, and he essentially was just like, Carney Lansford. Carney Lansford kind of comes off as the dude that was like, he was going bow hunting.
Yeah.
But I love that because I forgot about Carney Lansford.
Yeah, and it came off as kind of, like, you can tell there's still some bad blood.
He's like, that guy didn't like me, and I didn't like him.
And it comes off as kind of like, almost like Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame acceptance speech. You ever hear that?
It's not good.
It is quintessential petty. It is one of the pettiest things. And it's just him like calling out Jerry Reinsdorf and all these people. And everyone's in the audience like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he was the greatest
feel,
basketball player. That doesn't translate to greatest
Yeah, this doesn't feel necessary. And that Carney Lansford thing, it's like, let it go, Jose.
Yeah, although I get why because Carney Lansford was one of the top players at the time of the team. It was Dave Clark. It was
Dennis Eckersley.
Jose. Yeah, he talks about Eckersley and being smooth as shit, basically. Being this like a 70s style pitcher. And
Dennis Eckersley was dope.
I fucking love Dennis Eckersley.
Yeah.
Like he does color for
I can see that.
Nesson for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
He's been like one of their color guys for a long time.
He was a Cub for a while.
Yeah, he's
fucking
great.
love him.
Oh, he's fucking great. He really pumps up Ricky Henderson, which
Ricky Henderson seems like a good dude.
Ricky Henderson was the Willie Mays Hayes basically based off of Ricky Henderson's abilities. Between Ricky Henderson and also at the time later on Otis Nixon, who we found out later was just railing on coke the whole time.
Sure.
But Ricky Henderson, widely considered probably the fastest man in baseball.
Right.
There's not,
and played till he was like 45.
He was playing. He was playing in the minors forever. Yeah. Like he was unbelievable.
That's another rookie card that was worth a bit of coin if you could get your hand on. 1980. 80 rookie.
He's running in the photo too. Man.
Yeah. Ricky Henderson, when I say he seems like he's probably a pretty great guy, there's that really famous story about the first $1 million check he ever got. And how the team issued it to him. And like a year later, accounting was like, Ricky Henderson hasn't cashed that check. And he was like, oh, yeah, I framed it. I'll get another one. How fucking crazy is that?
Type void and get it back.
Yeah, like just fucking take a picture on your 1980s phone and send it to the bank.
There's this wonderful story of when Manny Ramirez was working with the Red Sox. And he just didn't cash checks. So they'd be backed up like months and months. And they literally had to call him and be like, dude, you need to cash. And he would just have stacks of checks in his place.
Must be nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's Manny being Manny. But like, that is such a weird, like he would just have checks for like $300,000, just stacks of them.
That's insane. Yeah. Wonder if he's still got any, if we can get one.
We should kill Manny Ramirez and take his money.
That's not a bad idea. We should rob him.
So there's this part where Jose really brings sort of the jealousy and competition out. And there's a quote that we have here where he goes, we hung out here and there, but Mark didn't like to go out with me because the girls wouldn't pay any attention to him. They would all pay attention to me. That was mostly because of Mark. He was never the best looking guy in the world. He felt awkward and out of place at clubs. Plus, he could never talk. I was quiet too, but compared to Mark, I was a social dynamo. Mac just didn't like to go out because it felt like he was being overshadowed. He was married at the time. Like, that's the one thing that I don't think really translated, because Jose addresses it later that Clemens was the only guy I never saw cheat on his wife. But at the same time, McGwire got married in like 87, I want to say.
Right.
And so in that regard,
maybe that's why he wasn't such a poon hound at the club.
Yeah, you didn't fuck the way I fucked. It's like, yeah, he sure didn't.
And that's probably got something to do with why he didn't want to go out.
Yeah, it's
happens.
Yeah, it's a real. See, he was married from 1984 to 1990.
Yeah, so Jose Canseco probably broke up his marriage.
Yeah, come on out, let's get some pussy, man.
Jackson with steroids.
Yeah.
McGwire's like, all right.
Yeah, let's fucking getting all horned up. That is
probably is why
that's
Mark
like
McGwire
yeah.
is. Because Jose Canseco, we haven't mentioned it. One of the things he talks about when he talks about steroids, there's a lot of implication that it will help you fuck better.
Oh, he doesn't even imply it. He says it out loud.
Yeah.
He says it makes you better at sex.
So he got Mark McGwire all hopped up on steroids and ruined his marriage.
Yeah, horny fuck juice going right in that ass. It means a lot of different stuff.
But in 88, he didn't want to fuck. What an idiot.
It's like, well, his marriage was there.
Yeah.
But I do, he didn't want to go out to the clubs with us because he wasn't the best looking guy. I do love that because he talks about his marriage to Esther as well. And it's so funny because he flip flops on being like, I was faithful and then like not being faithful at all. Like about being like, I did love her a lot.
Right.
You know, and then I don't know. It's so fascinating. Just the multiple chapters being so insanely different.
Yeah. And he talks a lot in the chapter about the Bash brothers about there's a lot of questioning why Mark McGwire didn't get the same media scrutiny that Jose Canseco did. And
you out trying to fuck all night, Jose.
Yeah. And then what's crazy is he follows that up with something we've been mentioning this whole fucking time, which is the car chapter.
Put this sweet, sweet car chapter into my veins. This is one of my favorite chapters of anything I've ever read.
It's maybe 3-4 pages.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit more than that. It's thicker than I expected it to be to just be about cars.
Right. And it comes in, I shit you not, hot on the heels of him being like, why the media pay so much attention to me? Is it because I'm Cuban?
And then it's like, I've always loved cars.
And it's like, that's a bold question to ask and then follow it up with a story about you driving 200 miles an hour on a freeway in Arizona and the police let you go.
Yeah.
Not only let you go, but ask if they can drive your car.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, although if I'm going to find out that there's cops not doing their job, it's probably going to be in Arizona.
Yeah, but probably not with people of color.
Yeah, but famous people of color is a very different situation.
And see, that's the thing.
I think Eddie Murphy had talked about that, or maybe it was Chappelle. It's like being rich and black is just being white.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for him talking about Mark McGwire getting more attention just because, and he does even say sometimes, oh, Mark was a good boy and I was a bad boy. So why did they give me all the attention? Because you're the bad boy.
You're a squeaky wheel, dude.
Yeah. And if you're out driving one of your 12 cars 200 miles an hour with your wife in the car.
I think it's like, wasn't the title like My First Lambo or something like that? It was the title of
My
the
First
chapter.
Lamborghini.
And he talks a lot. Like, I like, though, how he says his wife or girlfriend at the time convinces him to outrun the cops.
Right.
She's like, just fucking gun it. And then he pulls up to a blockade.
Yeah.
Which that was fast.
Well, he probably did gun it for a while. And then the cop just radioed ahead and was like, hey, other cops. If you see Jose Canseco driving a Lamborghini 200 miles an hour.
If you see a yellow Batmobile coming at you, just set up a... But it
with the world's biggest baseball player inside. So let him go.
By the way, do you follow him on Twitter?
No.
He went on a rant about some car salesman in Florida that like he was like a robber and a scammer, and I was just like, oh no,
amazing,
what happened? But yeah. So he talks about having 12 cars. He talks about how like a girl came to meet him, I think when he was with Texas maybe or something like that, and they were like, okay, well, take one of the cars and go to the go there. And he's like, she was like, I don't know how to do that, and the housekeeper or something was just figure it out.
Like she drove a Porsche there.
Yeah, because that was his first sports car, was a Porsche.
And he sold it to Ivan Rodriguez.
Yeah, and he wishes he kept it.
Right.
But the real one comes that in 1990, the story is so great because in 1990, he and Frank Thomas are leaving a baseball card show.
Right.
And Frank Thomas was a rookie at the time. He'd been drafted by the White Sox. And
Jose Canseco almost killed him.
And Frank Thomas was the shit.
He was.
1990.
And he still is now, thanks to that men's supplement he takes.
Eugenics or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Uncomfortable name.
Nugenics, I believe is what it's called.
Nugenics, yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
Altgenics.
Yeah, right. So he puts Frank Thomas in the front seat, and Frank Thomas is like, "This is a pretty nice car." And Jose's like, "Yeah, watch." And then he proceeds to almost kill Frank Thomas. They like spin out, and he's like, "We like almost went off a cliff." Which, like, if you're gonna take it that fast, don't do it on a fucking mountain road.
Yeah.
Like, have you not seen any movie?
Right.
Because he was talking about how, like, with a Lamborghini, the way they're built, the faster you go, the more it presses you towards the ground.
It's got a wide center of gravity.
Yeah, so it actually, like, the faster you go, it's actually theoretically the safer it is as far as, like, handling and stuff like that, which, I don't know.
Doesn't sound 100%.
Yeah,
I bet driving 100 miles an hour is safer than driving 200 miles an hour.
Sure.
Under any circumstances in any car.
But basically, Frank Thomas sees a turn sign that Jose does not see, and is like, Jose, well, we're going to die.
It'll help.
And then fucking Jose's like, oh, shit. And they fucking
Spin out.
And just were almost on the news. But instead, it was just the ending, the cherry on a perfect Sunday of a chapter.
It's such a crazy chapter to put in the middle of questioning why you got so much more media scrutiny than Mark McGwire.
You answered your own question.
Yeah. Even if those two incidents didn't make the news, they're still your answer. Because there are other incidents making the fucking news if you're out doing shit like that.
Yeah. And it's just like, why do people give me a hard time? You almost killed the #1 draft pick.
You almost killed Frank Thomas.
Like, you're known for being a guy who's caught speeding. You have been arrested for spousal abuse, which was a fascinating story from his perspective, because I, for years, thought he just beat the shit out of his wife. That's what I thought. I thought he just beat the shit out of his wife. It fits the narrative
Checks
of
all
what
the
I was
boxes.
expecting. And yet, when he explains it, basically they were in a fight in separate cars next to each other. And during the fight, he says he kind of like drifted into her, and that's what got him arrested. That's battery. And the way he explains it, he's like, it was an accident.
No, it was. You don't just accidentally drift into someone.
But also, though, if you're looking at somebody and yelling at them as you're driving, like if you're looking to the side, like you're not looking at the lines.
Which,
like, it's believable that this happened. I'm not saying that that is what happened.
Well, even at
isn't.
best, it's car slaughter. Like,
yeah. So the fact that he gets arrested for battery.
Like manslaughter.
Yeah, I get it.
I said car slaughter. Go on.
I was there. He gets arrested for battery, and he's like, I honestly think that's unfair. And I wasn't there for the intent, whether it was an accident or whether he just fucking smacked into her car.
Yeah.
But like, unless you're going 150 miles an hour, that's not going to kill someone. You're hitting your own car.
True.
But also the implications that your currently estranging husband would smash a car into you.
Yeah. Or even be chasing you through the streets in a separate car yelling at you. Like, that's...
Yeah.
If a person's driving away, let them drive away.
So I'm of two different mindsets on this, and it all depends on what information I cannot have, which is, was this you guys were yelling at each other and you were looking over and you drifted into your own car? Or was this an intimidation factor, frustration fucking deal in? Which, the way he talks about cars, I don't know. I can't speculate. I am speculating. And I believe some of what he's saying here. Because later on, when he talks about the actual one where he like grabs the girl by the hair, he's like, yeah, she wasn't paying attention to me. She wasn't listening. I fucking grabbed her by the hair and went to jail for it, and I deserve that.
Yeah.
So in that regard...
Well, that story leads me to believe that what probably happened on the street wasn't just because he's honest in that situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
There might be mitigating, like maybe he gets along, maybe he doesn't get along with the girl involved in the car incident, and he wants to paint that more as, oh, she's just lying on me. And maybe he's like talked to the other person and worked things out and is like, yeah.
Well, he says, like, even when he got arrested, his wife was like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, even she was like, that's not the case. So I guess it also could happen to be like where, and I understand that abused women will oftentimes be like, no, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so there's that. But
it's just one of those stories where we don't have.
Yeah. It honestly, in a situation like this, it could go either way.
Yeah.
In a time when I have gone on record as saying it generally doesn't go either way.
Yeah.
Like, but this one does kind of have an air of, all right, well, you know, this could actually be what happened.
Yeah, it could be, but also don't chase people with your car when they're trying to get away from you.
Different time, Adam.
True.
So
there was a lane for that back then.
So we're talking about his career is good. The Bash Brothers are in full effect. Things are going well. He's playing a game. He's in the outfield, gets called in, is about to go bat when he is informed, you've been traded.
Right.
See ya.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where we're going to cap this off, is that Bash Brothers era comes to a close.
Comes to an abrupt halt.
Like a unforeseen. And he's like, talks about this trade. We'll talk about the trade next episode.
But he does win AL MVP in 88. So again, all of the, McGwire got all the attention. No one wanted me to succeed.
I remember you were
there is evidence to the contrary.
Like, let's put it this way. 1989, your card is number 1 in the score set.
Yeah.
Buying boxes of baseball cards, your card is on the box. Remember how the boxes of baseball cards, like Topps, would have examples of the cards?
Yeah.
Jose Canseco was always a card on there.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing McGwire cards on the boxes.
No. Mark McGwire's rookie is boring as shit. It's a fucking Olympic team rookie card. Holding a fucking dorky ass baseball bat on his white bread shoulder.
I'm a teenager.
That's the thing too. Like, fuck Mark McGwire. Like, he did take steroids and he cheated too.
Yeah, there's no moral high ground of Mark McGwire other than he's not Jose Canseco. So in that regard, Jose's like, y'all gave McGwire a pretty free pass.
But in time, he didn't get a free pass either.
Yeah, through Congress.
Yeah, through Congress. And it also...
After the book.
It also became kind of a moot point after Barry Bonds broke the record again a couple years later.
Yeah.
Like, at that point, who cares how many home runs Mark McGwire hit in 98?
Todd McFarlane does. Creator of Spawn, Todd McFarlane does, because he's bought a lot of those baseballs.
Someone bought the Barry Bonds. I think Mark...
Also Todd McFarlane.
Are you sure? I thought it was Mark Echo.
Maybe he bought them off of Todd McFarlane.
Someone bought the Barry Bonds ball and destroyed it, which, come on. He bought the one where he broke the all-time home run record. Someone.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's a dick move.
Yeah, it really is. And I've done whole episodes of various podcasts about how questionable the treatment of Barry Bonds has been.
McFarlane spent, by the way, $3 million for McGwire's 70th. He paid $500,000 for Bonds' 73rd.
Huh. Well, Barry Bonds is an interesting parallel here, because a point I haven't made yet that I think I meant to make earlier is when it comes to baseball, yes, any American institution, there's going to be some inherent racism. But what baseball doesn't like is a jerk. They don't like a person, and that's what baseball didn't like about Barry Bonds.
Financially, they don't mind a jerk.
Right.
They will pay a jerk a lot of money.
Right.
But A-Rod is a good example of that too. Like, A-Rod is an asshole.
Sure.
Or at least he comes off as an asshole.
Right.
Barry Bonds is an asshole.
Huge asshole.
Huge asshole. And it's funny, though, because you can see how much of that was Willie Mays and Bobby Bonds that turned him into an asshole. Yeah. They were like, these racist motherfuckers are coming after you.
Right. So that's the thing. Like, there's something to be said for him being an asshole. Yeah. And there's something to be said for sports writers being able to overcome their opinions about Barry Bonds as a person and recognizing his achievements as a player and voting him into the Hall of Fame. But also, we're talking about baseball, and a lot of people have to die before baseball's going to change in that way.
Yeah.
Because it's a sport that values tradition, and it values the opinions of people who report and cover baseball. A lot of what happens in baseball is voted on by sports writers. Yeah. And if you spent your career being a dick to sports writers,
Barry
they're
Bonds
going to take it out on you when it comes time to vote.
That he hates sports writers.
Yeah.
Like, those were his number one.
And that actually should, like, anyone hearing me say that should make those sports writers look bad. They're in the wrong in that situation.
Yeah.
Because Barry Bonds' personality doesn't actually play into his achievements on the field, but you have to take into account how he treated sports writers when you factor in that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
The people voting for you are the people that you called scum for years. And it's funny because I read that Bonds book, And there was a lot of him like trying to be like a good dude and personable. And then they're like, it didn't.
Yeah.
He went right back to being a piece of shit.
Yeah. And with Jose Canseco, it probably isn't helping his case to be like,
everyone's racist.
Why'd I get all the attention? Is it because I'm Cuban? It's like, no, it's because you're spinning out your car on the freeway with Frank Thomas in it.
But I will say he was never really an asshole. He was never an asshole in public. He's done, his record of charity work is really great.
Sure.
And his
I mean, Barry Bonds probably is too. I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
I'd have to
citation needed.
I'd have to spot check that one a little bit because while certainly a lot of people will donate money, like donating time is a very different thing.
Yeah,
and like I know Canseco was actually very big on that, and he used to work with Make-A-Wish, and he was generally, I think, a good enough dude. I think he had some falters. I think there are certainly, as the writing of this book dictates, there's obvious roadblocks that he's hit emotionally.
Oh, sure.
I'm trying to put this as delicately as I possibly can.
He's got daddy issues.
Yeah. And I don't want to be ableist either in saying that I think mental health probably falls into there somewhere as well. Read the book if you can. It's a quick read.
It's a quick read.
It's a cheap buy on Amazon.
Yeah,
or the library.
I think it might even be out of print, but you can find copies of it.
It's not on
Amazon.
Audible, but you can buy used copies because I don't think people are holding on to it.
I think I paid like $7 for the copies I bought for this.
Yeah, and then he did a follow-up called Vindicated.
That is still in print.
Which, there it is.
Yeah, season 2.
I'll have to check that out and season 2 of
Jose Canseco, just us about
Vindicated.
Just us talking about his MMA career.
Yeah, so that's a sode.
That is an episode. This was a good episode.
I liked this one a lot. I was glad we could get into the meat of it. I felt like the last one, as they always tend to be, I think the pilot episodes of these miniseries are really just like a buildup of where you plan on going and what the early years are like.
Right.
But this really does cut to the meat of what it was like in the A's in that era, the Bash Brothers stuff. The fact that he and McGwire weren't close, and yet they were fucking sharing a stall,
on posters together, and injecting steroids into each other,
and doing appearances together, and fucking having a move. You know, they had that.
Yeah, they
arm.
even had a move.
Imagine doing that. Imagine like there's acting in that. I'm guessing, or
it's kayfabe.
It's either acting or retroactive, saying we were never friends because he got all the attention for the home runs and everything like that, and Jose got blackballed.
Right,
which is a reason to carry a chip on your shoulder. Being essentially told you're being blackballed. Meanwhile, Mark McGwire was being lauded as the savior of baseball.
Yeah. There's going to be some degree of like, well, I taught him to use steroids. Where's my credit?
You kicked me out for making him better.
Yeah.
And you're exalting him. So he's right about
he's right on a lot of this. I feel like some of his overall characterizations of baseball and what was happening in like the Bat Boy story and stuff like that. I feel like there probably is a racial degree or element to it, but
it can be
there's also
exacerbated by
mitigating factors that come with the fact that you're playing baseball.
Yeah. Well, you also never want to admit I was being an asshole.
Right.
You usually be like, oh, there was a reason. There was some sort of external reason that's not my fault.
Yeah.
For that. All right. Well, tune in next time for an episode of Jose Cansecast.
We're going to get into steroids next time, but the early rumors about his steroid use.
So yeah, all the stuff that started on early when people are talking about it. And it's funny because as we'll get into it, he's like, I don't understand why. It's like, because you were using steroids.
Because you were using steroids. They just at the forefront.
They called it.
Them. Yeah.
They called it like fucking Ruth calling a shot.
Pointing at his biceps from the stands.
And then bashing him with a bat.
All right. Do we got anything to plug?
You can check out Tom and Jeff Watch Batman on the Gamefully Unemployed Network.
Edit that out, Brett.
Why would you do that to Tom Ryman?
I'm doing it to you.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not nice.
Not Tom.
Also, the Mint on Card is the second Friday of every month at Beautiful Blast from the Past on Magnolia in Burbank, California. You can check that out. We've got some great episodes coming up. Shows.
Sure.
We call them shows. How about you, Adam? What do you have to plug?
Oh, not much right now. Check out the network, patreon.com/unpops. And we got some things coming down the pike.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Follow me on Instagram at Adam Todd Brown, Todd with 1D. I'm trying to quit fucking with Twitter.
Yeah.
Just
I get it. I get it.
all the worst people in life that I interact with, it usually happens on Twitter.
Yeah. I'm at Hey There Jeffro on those. You can follow me on either. It's fine.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, bitch.
Bye, motherfuckers.